Cocky jocks often believe they're unstoppable, flexing their muscles, mocking those they see as weaker, and walking around like they own the place. Most people stay silent, unwilling to challenge these inflated egos. But every now and then, karma shows up with a vengeance. Take this moment for example. A pumped-up bodybuilder thought he could humiliate arm wrestling legend Devin Larratt in front of a crowd, throwing out insults and acting like the match was just a formality. Devin, calm and composed, didn't take the bait, but the arrogant jock kept pushing, convinced his size alone guaranteed victory. He had no idea he was about to get humbled in the most satisfying way possible. He tried to intimidate Devin Larratt before the match even began, flexing and posturing like he had already won. But the moment the match started, the so-called muscle monster turned into a panicked, screeching mess. Moving a professional's arm proved tougher than moving a mountain. Devin didn't just beat him, he toyed with him, effortlessly dismantling the bodybuilder's ego and leaving him humiliated for good. But wait, this wasn't his only crash course in humility. Just a day earlier, this same meathead stormed into a jiu-jitsu gym, attacking the first person he laid eyes on. What he didn't know? That random guy was actually a coach. What followed was pure poetic justice. The coach flipped him around like a ragdoll, threw in a few fatherly slaps for good measure, and showed him that technique will always beat brute strength. Thrown out in shame, you'd think he'd learned his lesson. But no, the very next day, he came crawling back, pretending to apologize, and then went in for a handshake. That so-called apology turned out to be nothing but a Trojan horse, a disguise for yet another cheap move. The coach, now seeing the full extent of this guy's arrogance, put him through a brutal re-education session that could only be described as hellish. But the lesson still didn't stick. Not satisfied, the meathead then went after someone even weaker, a fragile-looking girl. Bad move. She took him down with lightning speed, punishing him even more ruthlessly than her coach had, as if she were dealing with an unruly child. When the dazed giant came to, he lunged at someone who had tried to help him, desperate to salvage some pride, only to get humiliated again. At last, the beast started to realize a painful truth: muscles and tattoos don't make you invincible. But his arrogance still hadn't run dry. In another showdown, this overconfident brute stormed in with the same smug attitude, radiating the raw energy of unchecked ego. Against a calm, reserved professional, the bodybuilder's bravado was cranked up to the max. And just when you thought he couldn't get any lower, he pulled a dirty move, grabbing his opponent by the throat. Trying to publicly assert dominance, the modest fighter entered the cage quietly, while his tattoo-covered opponent swaggered in with that same cocky grin glued to his face, convinced this would be an easy win. But the moment the fight began, reality hit hard. For his opponent, it was like hitting a training bag. The overconfident jock was that easy to dismantle. Karma didn't just catch up to him, it smashed him with a vengeance, delivering the brutal lesson he had coming. And it doesn't end there. Next up, we meet one of Russia's strongest men, Mikhail Koklyaev. A record-breaking powerhouse, Koklyaev believed he could dominate the MMA world just like he did strength sports. To prove it, he boldly challenged none other than Alexander Emelianenko, a true fighting legend and younger brother of Fedor. But instead of training harder, the bodybuilder chose to run his mouth, provoking the pro fighter with trash talk and bravado. When the bell rang, though, all that arrogance evaporated. For a few brief moments, the strongman tried to keep up, but his confidence was no match for cold, hard skill. At first, the sheer size of the strongman helped him stay afloat, but that didn't last long. The moment the professional turned up the intensity, that mountain of muscle crumbled like a cheap sandcastle. Next up was another inflated ego. This guy strutted into a boxing gym, chest out, full of swagger, and challenged the top fighter there, convinced he'd dominate. With ease. But once the bell rang, the reality check was swift and brutal. The seasoned boxer didn't just beat him, he turned the ring into a torture chamber. All those years of lifting weights meant nothing when faced with real skill, and the muscle head was utterly dismantled. And then came one of the boldest moves yet. A massive bodybuilder thought it'd be fun to test his strength against UFC legend Dustin Poirier. Confident and cocky, he mocked Dustin's smaller frame, acting like he could squash him without effort. It started off light, a friendly spar, but for Dustin, it was like trying to outmaneuver a gorilla. In fact, he admitted this felt scarier than facing Khabib. But as always, size comes with a cost. The bodybuilder's stamina tanked fast, and that's when Dustin struck. With surgical precision, he locked in an armbar on the mountain of a man. The bodybuilder thought he had it in the bag. After all, he'd chosen an opponent who was much smaller, thinking size alone guaranteed victory. But once again, he underestimated what a true professional can do. In the beginning, the jock used his sheer mass to dominate, tossing the pro around like a ragdoll. But that didn't last. As soon as the fighter tapped into his technique, the tables turned fast. A ruthless flurry of strikes turned that giant wall of muscle into a crumpled mess, and by the end of it, the only muscle getting any real work was his brain, assuming he still had the sense to use it. There's nothing quite as satisfying as watching arrogant meatheads get humbled. If you'd love to see this kind of justice in real life, or better yet, dish it out yourself, smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching.